So, hello. In this episode today, or in this conversation, it is literally just you and me. And I'm going to address something. First thing is first. I haven't done a solo episode for a very long time. And I'll tell you a few reasons why. Let me let you into my life just a little bit. When I started the Soul Sync, I can't believe I started it at the beginning of December. We're now in May. And when I throw myself into things, I tend to throw myself into things like absolutely crazy. I've said to people a lot over the years that I don't tend to have like a middle like some people. I think partly that's due to my ADHD. But when I do something, I literally go, all stations go, and I just literally throw myself into it. So the Soul Sync is no exception to that. So I have been interviewing so many incredible people over the last few months, and literally it has been such a learning experience. But what's been playing at the back of my mind is the fact that I haven't done any solo episodes. And when I first set out on this journey of the Soul Sync, I'll tell you something. I actually wasn't intending to interview anyone, really. I was starting the Soul Sync with the sole purpose of using my life experiences, and my gosh, I have had a lot. To say that I have had 2 dark nights of the souls is probably an understatement. I'd say it's probably nearer 3 or 4. But where I've got to in my life as a result of it is a place now where, you know, I'm trying to develop my mediumship. I'm on this kind of spiritual journey. I've built a multi-million-pound company from literally just my savings, and that in itself has nearly broken me at times. And what I wanted to do with the Soul Sync was I wanted to create this podcast in order to help people by sharing my own life experiences, because for my 36 years on planet Earth, coming up to 37 years on planet Earth, I feel like I've probably had more experiences than the average 55-year-old. However, very conveniently, I started to interview people who were so interesting, guests who've got such interesting backgrounds. And I thought, these guests have so much to offer all of you lovely listeners, which is the sole reason I do this podcast, is because I want to help people, maybe not to make the same mistakes as I have, because my gosh, I've made a lot of them. If there was a filing cabinet of mistakes, it would stretch from here in Bristol to Reading probably. But what I have noticed recently is I have been not using, because using isn't a very nice word, I've been very conveniently finding myself, because of the fact that I'm interviewing a lot of guests, it's actually stopped me from talking about myself, which is very convenient, because actually I've come to realise something recently. I fear judgment, and I think so many of us do. And actually, my fear of judgment is at times stopping me speaking my truth. And I thought to myself the other day, Jason, enough is enough. Bloody hell. The reason you started this podcast is to help people. You've got to start talking, or you're going to help no one. And also, I've been very aware of the fact that so many of the guests that we've had on so far have literally poured their heart out and shared some of the most difficult stories of, you know, everything from grief to addiction to all sorts. And I haven't yet done that myself. So I thought I need to start speaking, basically. And what I wanted to talk about in this episode today is judgment, because I think it's very relevant. And I think so many of us fear judgment, and it stops us from living our lives to the fullest. And I am no exception to that, because, you know, even though probably if I'd gone back a few months ago and gone, do I fear judgment? Do I fear what people think about me? I'd have gone, bloody hell no. I don't care what people think about me. But actually, the truth of the matter is, I do. So I thought today, And there's a reason for this, and I will share the reason at the end of this episode. And it's a very interesting reason. Actually, no, do you know what? I'm going to share it right now, because why not? The next episode that I'm going to release directly after this one is a conversation between me and a very, very, very lovely guy called Zachary Oliver. Zachary Oliver is a TikTok influencer. He's amassed about 180,000 people following his TikTok page. And what he posts about is addiction. And he speaks really, really candidly and honestly and with such compassion about his own experiences. And Zach's story is absolutely incredible. So I kept coming across Zach on Instagram. Not that I use social media a great deal. I try and keep away from social media, if I'm being totally honest. But I reached out to Zach because I thought there was a lot of similarities in my and his story. And I wanted to get Zach on to talk about addiction and to use him coming on and sharing his experiences of addiction to allow me to talk about my experiences. And actually, we had a really good conversation. But before I get onto that episode, I want to talk about judgment, because it's judgment that's probably held me back. And in a way, maybe reach out to Zach to not so much have my hand held to tell the story, but it was really beautiful for both. I think for both of us, because our backgrounds are so similar. We both work in the same industry. We've both started a business in that industry. We've both built our businesses to multi-million-pound levels and nearly lost it all as a result of pitfalls that we've fallen down. So before I talk about that episode anymore, because you can listen to it straight after this one, I wanted to talk about judgment. Now, I think I've done some research prior to doing this recording today. I wanted to research all about judgment and why us as humans are so prone to fear it. Now, I think the research says, and I'm going to go into some of the research because I think it's going to be healing in itself. And actually, I've started to realise recently that how am I going to heal these past traumas that I've got? Because I've got a lot of them. And some of them I think I've processed, but some of them are still really raw. And I think like a lot of us do, when we have trauma, we might feel that we've dealt with that trauma. It's, been put back into the, very back of our mind or filing cabinet, never to be thought about again. And all we need is to have something that just triggers us off or reminds us of that, and that trauma can come back to us. So sometimes, you have to keep revisiting these things. And, I've had things in my life, especially back in my early 20s. I had a lot of trauma in my early 20s. And it all really came about as a lack of self-worth. I really didn't like my own company in my early 20s. And I was so desperate to be in the company of other people because I didn't like being by myself. I'd feel like I'm bored and this, that, and the other. But I think a lot of that came from the bullying that I experienced at school. I think a lot of that stemmed from, when I think about it, the fact that I'm gay. And when I was very young, when I was a child, when I was in my teenage years, when I was at school, being gay, it wasn't on the TV that much. I think there was a couple of gay comedians, but not people that I would say were, doing a whole lot to change the landscape. And I went to an all-boys school. The all-boys school I went to, and I'm going completely off topic now, but I'm going to go where the conversation goes. And this is the thing when you talk to yourself, isn't it? I find myself, I'm talking to myself, and I just go off on complete tangents. But you'll probably notice by now I do that with guests anyway. So as I was saying, when I was at school, and the school that I went to, it was in one of the bottom 5 secondary schools. I didn't know this at the time. Essentially, what happened was we lived in London, my mum, my brother, my stepdad, and we were all in a house that my stepdad owned, but the house was not big enough. We were sort of bursting at the seams. And by this point, the house prices in London were just absolutely crazy. So we decided to move to Kent. And we went down to this beautiful area called Rochester that is in a town called Medway. And Rochester, it's beautiful. It's known for Charles Dickens. That's where Charles Dickens lived. It was where he wrote his novels, and it's steeped in history. There's a massive, beautiful castle in Rochester. It gets tourists going to it all the time. So when we went down there to view the new build house in Rochester, it was beautiful. It was idyllic. We got told by the housing developer that there's this beautiful school down the road called King's School, and it all seemed great. So my stepdad, my mum put an offer on this house, beautiful house. What we didn't know at the time was Rochester was actually surrounded. Rochester was the very nice place, but everywhere around Rochester was an absolute dump. And where my school was in a town that the word chav, if you don't know what the word chav is, do you know what? Google it. I'm not going to try and decipher what the word chav is because I'm going to end up saying the wrong thing. But basically, the town where my school was, that's where the word derived from. So it was an all-boys school that I went to, and it was rough. It was a horrible, horrible school. And there was no education that took place at school. We didn't do any science practicals because it wasn't safe. People were attacked at school. Teachers were attacked. I actually feared being in school and knowing that I was gay, because I knew I was gay from about 11 years old, maybe even a bit earlier. My mum said that she's always known since I was about 2 years old, and I believe her. Probably cutting ladies out of the next catalogue and sticking them in because I liked how fashionable they were at 4 years old. Maybe that was a bit of a giveaway, I must say. But I, really feared being myself at school because I was bullied anyway, and I didn't want to, anyone to find out that, I was gay because, the word gay was an insult at school. You're gay. So I think a lot of my troubles in my early 20s, and when I look back now, when I ended up being with that partner who, absolutely sent a kind of bomb through my life at that point, which you may, when I just joined the police, I've talked about this in previous episodes, but when I went to break up with him, and it was so hard, so hard to break up with him. But when I finally did, he made some false allegations to the police, and my life was literally tipped upside down. But when I look back now, I think to myself that, I wouldn't say that I attracted him into my life, but I would say that my lack of self-worth and my desperation to just be with someone, that opened myself up to potentially, come across that type of person. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. I want to talk about judgment here. So I want to go back to some of the research that I've done in regards to why humans are so prone to judgment. Now, the research says that it's rooted in both evolutionary psychology and social dynamics. So, number one, from the research that I've done, is it goes back to survival instincts, because evolutionary humans have developed a strong need to assess and categorize their environments quickly. Makes sense. We need to know where we are. We have that fight or flight mode, I guess. It goes on to say, this instinct helped early humans identify potential threats and opportunities for survival. Judgment in this context served as a mean for making rapid decisions. Yes, I can very much see how, we need to be able to very quickly decipher that fight or flight mode. Yes, back then it was the saber-toothed tiger, but now we still need that survival instinct. So yes, that does make sense. Number two from my research says social comparison. And I'm going to find this really interesting talking through this with you, mainly because I'm trying to stop judgment on myself to be able to add value to you so I can share my stories more honestly. And please don't think I haven't been honest on the Soul Sync. I have been very honest, but I want to be speaking more of my truth to help, even if it's just one of you, because some of the pain and hard lessons I've had to learn to get to where I am now, I really think there's value in some of that. So anyway, number two, social comparison. Humans are inherently social beings, and we often compare ourselves to others as a way of understanding our own identity and status within a group. Judgment arises from this innate tendency to evaluate ourselves and others based on various criteria. I think there's a lot of that. And I think there's a lot of that, especially in the gay community, I found. We're always kind of looking at where we sit within social structures. And I think that we're, the way society is, that makes total sense. And, we have these very complex, as I guess when I think about it, humans, social structures and hierarchies and so on. And, we're programmed from a very young age to, understand about, the fact that we want to strive in life. We want to be successful. It matters what our peers in school think about us. So we develop these lived experiences from a really, really young age, and it's ingrained in us. And when we go through life, because essentially when we're born and we come into this world, we are our truest self. We are, and I believe that we are just pure love when we come into this world. But from the very moment we're born, and literally from the moment we're born, we are exposed to trauma and experiences. And it is those experiences that we go through in our life that, does define the person that we are. The more I'm going along this spiritual journey, what I'm really trying to uncover for myself is to understand my true self and my true essence, stripping back all these kind of, how would I describe it? Personality traits, I guess, that I've evolved from the experiences that I've been through. The research went on, number 3, to talk about cognitive bias. And it says judgment is influenced by cognitive biases, which are mental shortcuts that our brain uses to process information efficiently. These biases can lead to snap judgments and stereotypes based on limited information or preconceived notions. For example, the halo effect causes us to perceive individuals who possess certain desirable qualities, such as attractiveness or success, more favourably overall. I think cognitive biases are massive in this world that we live in now. I think especially in the world that we live in with social media influencers, people striving to look better, look younger for longer. And we do, we kind of, I think even I try now, and I've been trying to do this for a good long while, is not to judge anybody, even when someone's having a bad day. Or actually, no, I'm jumping the gun there. If I go into a shop or wherever it might be, and someone's rude and, obnoxious, if I went back 2 years ago, or even so much as a year, or even sometimes probably now, because I'm not saying that, I look at every single person through a lens of compassion, although that is where I'm striving to be. I might have an experience with someone where they might be a bit rude, and, back before I kind of was really conscious of it, I'd have probably been rude back. Now, my way of thinking about it is, has that person had a bad day? Are they okay? And what I try and do is I try and send them love, because I guess no one wants to be rude. No one strives to upset people, but I guess we're all going through life. We're all on our different paths and so on. I'm finding this research really interesting. I hope you are. I went away earlier and I really thought, right, I want to understand the subject of judgment because I'm struggling with it too. I thought, right, I need some research here. Anyway, number 4 goes on to talk about social norms and expectation, because it says society establishes norms and expectations for behaviour, so appearance, success, which really influences how individuals judge themselves and others. Conformity to these norms is often rewarded, while deviation may lead to social criticism. And again, that's really true. We live in these very complex social structures. And, in society, there is a lot of expectation of what we should be, who, the sort of life we should have. I think there's a lot of pressure on women to, have children by a certain age, to, be married, have the 2.4 children and so on. And, we can feel a lot of judgment if we're, not being the person that we should be. Sometimes I've fallen into the trap many times over the years of even my business, for instance. What drove a lot of that business success was the fact that, I really felt that I, wanted to have a certain level of income. I wanted to have a certain car. I wanted to have a certain style of house. And when I strip it back, a lot of that was because of society's definition of what success is. My definition now of success is very, very different. A lot of people have said to me, and actually this is very relevant to the next episode about addiction. When I was starting my business, and about 2 years in, it was doing very well. It had surpassed £1 million turnover, and people used to say to me all the time, and I guess rightly so in a lot of ways, Jason, you're really successful. Congratulations, you're doing so well. Internally, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel successful. I felt that I was struggling under pressure. I felt that a lot of my business success was driven by fear, actually, because when I first entered the recruitment industry, I was in a really bad set of circumstances. I barely had 2 pennies to rub together. Actually, to be fair, I didn't even have 2 pennies to rub together because I was in severe debt. So a lot of my success, although, I don't want to say it was all driven by negativity, because that's not true. But, and I'm going to break this down because I think it's really important that I get the messaging right on this. I was driven by the fear of not having anything at that time. And the fact of the matter was, when I started my business, my mum was living in my flat in London, and I was under a lot of pressure. And even when I first entered the recruitment industry, I was in a really bad set of circumstances. So I was driven very much by the fear that I didn't have. But what I did do was I used visualization to go, Jason, and affirmations like, Jason, you're going to make it. Jason, you're going to be the best. Jason, you're going to be successful. So I was really, really, really wedded in, this is going to work. This has to work. There is no other choice but this working. But that desire and drive and kind of, I guess, manifestation, what was driven ultimately by the fear of the situation I was in at the time. Honestly, I'm going down a million rabbit holes, but I guess that is going to happen in this type of episode. I'm going to go on because this research is interesting, and I found it really interesting. You'd laugh if you saw it. It's like highlighted to bits, which often a lot of my guest notes are. I go to look, quite funny at the Soul Sync. I sometimes go to look at my guest notes on the day that I'm going to interview someone, and I look at the whole thing thinking, Jason, there's more highlighted on this that there isn't. Maybe it's not really highlighting anything, given that nearly all of the document is highlighted. Anyway, number 5 says fear of the unknown. Now this, I think this is a massive one for people, and it's been a massive one for me. Humans are naturally wary of the unknown and the unfamiliar. Judgment can serve as a defense mechanism against perceived threats or uncertainties by categorizing them as other or different. This fear-based judgment can lead to prejudice and discrimination against individuals. I think fear of the unknown is massive. I think that we, as humans, fear things that we don't know. I think that is a natural mechanism. And I guess when it really does come to judgment, we even when you try not to judge anybody, we make judgments in a split second. The amount of times, I guess, when I've kind of come across someone and in my mind I've been maybe expecting them to have a certain accent or be a certain type of person. And then when they talk to you or you strike up conversation, and they're totally different. And it's so true. And I do think there is a lot of the fear of the unknown. It goes on to say self-preservation and ego protection. Judgment can also be a way for individuals to protect their self-esteem and ego by comparing themselves favourably to others or critiquing those who seem threatening or inferior. Individuals can maintain a sense of superiority or self-worth. Really interesting. I'm going to go on because I think number 7 is also a really good point. It talks about cultural and environmental influences and says, cultural and environmental factors play a significant role in shaping how judgment manifests within society. Cultural norms, media portrayals, and interpersonal interactions all contribute to the development of judgmental attitudes and behaviours. I think it's very true. I think that we, especially now the world we live in, we're influenced so much. I think if we go back to a time before the internet and before, you had TV on demand or whatever, you would be very much, what you went through life experiencing would be what, how you would form your kind of beliefs and expectations. And I think to myself, when I go back to a time before, the internet, the TV, and everything like that, I think to myself that maybe people, probably went about their life in a way where they weren't so influenced by outside sources. Maybe they would live their life more in a way of what they see is what they believe, and what they see, they feel. And what I'm trying to get at is they would take life much more as they find it. But I think in the world that we live in now, where, we're influenced in so many ways. And obviously these tech companies that, run all these different platforms are, programming very complicated algorithms to influence us. That's what they want us to do. They want us to stay on these platforms. They want us to be on their apps as much as possible. And these apps are designed to tap into our psyche and to influence us. Being able to influence people is big money. Advertisers pay a lot of money to really narrow down. And actually, it's really interesting. Even in my business recently, we was looking at social media advertising, and it's absolutely bonkers the amount of filters that you can delve down to get your target audience. And if you've got a particular product or a particular message that you want to get out there, it's so easy these days to get that in front of the right people and to get your message out there and to be influencing people. And these social media companies, I don't know how much you know about this, but, sorry if I'm teaching you how to suck eggs, but, when you were stopping on a post, even for so much as a nanosecond, a split second, all of that data is being recorded into the big algorithm. And, that's all being used in order to learn about you. And, it must be absolutely crazy how much coding is attributed to us, because, even Zach, who's on the next episode, I came across him from social media. Did I tell social media that I've had addiction in the past? No, but it seems to know to give me the content. And the funny thing is, I don't even use it that much. So, I think that we are all being so influenced, and obviously the influences that we get do shape our judgments. I think as well that recognizing that judgment is often based on perception rather than reality, because what I'm starting to really think about, and I've come to realize, is what someone perceives about me or they perceive about you most of the time is not going to be accurate, and it's not going to reflect who you truly are. And the thought process that I'm coming to these days is whatever someone thinks about me doesn't really in any way impact my life. And, I think that the judgment, I guess, that I truly fear, actually, no, I'm going to U-turn on that, on what I was about to say. What I was going to say is the amount of times that I haven't done things in my life or put myself forward for certain experiences or certain opportunities or even gone to talk to someone in a bar. I haven't done because I feared rejection and I feared judgment. And, really, the only people's judgment who I really care about is that of my very close friends and family. And I think sometimes the harshest judgment, and this is what I'm coming to realize, actually comes from within ourselves. I am, and I'm terrible for this, I am my own biggest critic. And I am very hard on myself. And recently it's dawned on me, and I've had to say this to myself, and I think this is a very valid point. Jason, if you spoke to your friends sometimes the way that you speak to yourself, you'd have no friends. Because sometimes I say to myself, Jason, you fucking idiot. Jason, you are an absolute beep, beep, beep. But I wouldn't speak to a friend like that. And I've started realizing, Jason, you are really hard on yourself, and you are judging yourself more than anyone else is ever going to judge you. And it's so true. So we do that to ourselves so much. And I think, part of the reason why I've probably so bad for judging myself is because of I working for myself, being so driven to grow my business. Without that kind of self-awareness and judgment in some ways, I probably wouldn't be where I am in the business world now. I think where this judgment, I think, really comes from is the fear of rejection. And I think it is that. I think judgment is often rooted in the fear of rejection or not belonging. And when I reflect back on how fear has influenced my actions and decisions, so much of the time it stopped me expressing myself in the truest way. So I guess, how do you overcome judgment? It's a good question. And I did a lot of research into this earlier. And the research said to me, when I got the research, and I'd spent about an hour looking into this earlier, how do you overcome judgment? How do you speak more of your own truth? How do you do that? I think I was a little bit disappointed when I was Googling, because I was expecting to find something more revolutionary. But what the research said, the broad brush strokes of what came up was obviously therapy. I was expecting that to come up. I've never had therapy, which is, in itself absolutely mind-boggling, and I probably should look into it because of all the things that I've been through. But what I've started to find so healing for me is journaling. And I've never really journaled, but I'm actually finding that rather than all of my thoughts being in my head and going round and round and round in my mind, which, can be torturous at times, to get it down on paper is very, very healing. And actually, even just talking on this podcast, or even just not, you don't have to have a podcast to, heal or to whatever. But I've recently just started, recording myself talking as a kind of like, I guess you could call it an audio diary. But what the research said was it talked about affirmations. So, rewiring the brain, essentially, rewiring the brain to get it to start to think different. And one of the ways it said to do that was to use affirmations. So, really, affirmation could be, I am a lovely person, and I, am, well, actually, this is a really bad one. I'm going to use the one it says on the form, or on the research. But I read it and I didn't think it was the best one. But rather than me try to think of affirmations on the spot, it says, I am resilient in the face of criticism. I use feedback constructively to grow and improve, but I don't let it define my self-worth. I have used affirmations a lot over the years, but I've mainly used affirmations from a manifesting perspective. So, I use affirmations a hell of a lot. I probably use them more than I even think about. But, my early days of recruitment, I would say to myself, I am the best London recruiter. I am going to make a lot of money in recruitment. I am going to be the best at this. And I'd normally do that every morning when I was brushing my teeth. Affirmations do work, but you've and I do think this, I think you've got to get into the habit of using them again and again. I don't know what the stats are, so please don't quote me on this, but when you are trying to reprogram your brain or rewire your subconscious, it takes a lot of time. It doesn't happen overnight. It can take a few weeks. One of the most powerful things when it comes to affirmations, and I appreciate this isn't for everyone, is recording yourself saying the affirmations, whatever it might be. You might want to, stop feeling judged. You might want to have more self-love and compassion, whatever it might be. Say those affirmations in your voice, record it on a voice note, whatever, and play it back to yourself, because there is nothing more powerful than your own voice speaking back to you. Now, I appreciate a lot of people don't like listening back to their own voice. I was probably in that position as well. But, if you don't like listening to your own voice, then perhaps question, why don't you like listening to your own voice? Why would you not like your own voice? And if you don't like it, why not? It's your voice. So it also says mantras are a very good way to get over judgment. And what else does it say here? Oh, no, it's just to say print out on another page. Anyway, I just wanted to say to all of you lovely people, and you all are lovely. I have had, honestly, so many nice messages and comments. And, it's the love that is on this podcast just drives me so much. And it's what it's what's got me to this position of going, Jason, you need to address judgment as well. And I hope I've done that on this episode. And please know, moving forward, I am just going to say it as it is. And I want to really help as many of you as possible. And I'm going to be doing episodes from a really heartfelt place, addressing, lots of things that I think trip us up in life. And like you, I'm still very much learning with you. I am by no means, the finished article. I've got the same struggles as so many of us do. But, what I am driven to do is to constantly keep self-developing myself and getting better every single day. And, and also show myself as much compassion as possible. I'm actually in a place at the moment where, a few years ago, I've always been fairly overweight, and I've had periods when I was in the police, I was in pretty good shape, but I was very overweight about 2.5 years ago, and I didn't used to like my picture being taken. I didn't like looking back at pictures, and it's actually quite funny now, because when I look back at pictures of myself, like 2.5 years ago, I look at the way that I've taken the picture, and it would be cutting off the top of my head because I didn't like my hair. It would be me posing. And you could just tell looking back now that I just didn't love myself at all. I went on this big journey about 2.5 years ago of saying, right, I'm going to try and get in the gym and lose weight. And it was not easy, but where I'm sitting now, I'm 28 kilos lighter. Don't ask me what that is in stone, because I don't know what the metric is, but it's a lot of weight. And I actually feel in the best, healthiest place I've ever been. And it's kind of funny, because I think, well, I'm the oldest I've ever been. Of course, I'm the oldest I've ever been, but I actually feel the healthiest I've ever been. But, I really do believe in that whole mind, body and spirit, because I think all of it is so important, and I'm trying to show myself as much compassion. But anyway, the next episode is me and the very, very lovely Zach, and we're going to talk about healing, trauma, and our experiences of addiction. So lots of love, and I'll see you on the next episode.